For 18 years, I gave everything to this company. I was always the first one in and the last one out. Promotions, setbacks, late nights, emergencies, I was there through it all. My loyalty was unwavering, and I took pride in building something that felt like mine. So when a new manager came in, I welcomed him with the same dedication I gave to everyone before him. But I didn't expect betrayal. In less than a month, he replaced me with his inexperienced nephew, just like that. My office, my title, my work, all handed over like I never existed. But what he didn't know was that the board knew me too, and they don't forget loyalty that easily. I still remember the first day the new manager walked into the office. Crisp suit, confident smile, and eyes that scanned the room like he already owned the place. His name was Daniel Cooper, mid-40s, polished, charming in that corporate way where every word felt rehearsed. The board brought him in from another city to modernize operations. I didn't mind. After nearly 2 decades in the company, I had worked with 5 different managers. Each came in with ideas, some good, some bad, but all eventually came to rely on me when things got serious. Daniel wasn't different, at first. He asked the right questions, attended team meetings, showed interest in learning the culture. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. After all, I'd trained every new leader for the last 15 years. I figured he'd appreciate that kind of continuity. But within 2 weeks, I noticed something was off. He wasn't just learning the ropes, he was evaluating who fit into his world and who didn't. And apparently, I didn't. It started subtly. Projects I used to lead were handed to others. My weekly check-ins with upper management were cancelled without explanation. Emails I sent began going unanswered. I asked Daniel about it directly one afternoon. He gave me that same corporate smile and said, "Don't worry, David. Just trying to redistribute tasks and give everyone a chance to shine." I knew what that meant. I'd heard similar lines when others were being phased out. But this was different. I wasn't some low performer coasting at the edge of relevance. I had led major initiatives that brought in millions in revenue. I trained half the senior team. My name was on awards in the lobby. You don't just redistribute that. Then came Jason, Daniel's nephew. Fresh out of college, barely older than the interns, and somehow, he was suddenly everywhere. He sat in on client meetings, reviewed internal reports, and within a week, he was added to high-level calls usually reserved for senior staff. No job title, no official announcement. Just there. When I asked Daniel about him, he casually said, "He's just shadowing me for experience." Harmless. Harmless, my foot. By the 3rd week, Jason was given one of the accounts I'd managed for years. Clients started calling me, confused, asking why someone they'd never met was now handling their business. I had no answer. I wasn't even in the loop anymore. And then, on a Thursday afternoon, Daniel called me into his office. I knew what was coming the moment I stepped in. He didn't even look me in the eye. "David," he began, "we've appreciated your service over the years, but the company's evolving. We need fresh perspectives and a more agile leadership approach. Effective immediately, we're terminating your role. HR will provide your exit package." Just like that. 18 years. Gone in under 60 seconds. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I just sat there, stunned, watching a man who hadn't even learned the names of half the team fire someone who built the company's backbone. I walked out with the same dignity I walked in with on my first day, straight-backed and silent. But what Daniel didn't know was that my silence wasn't surrender. You don't spend 18 years at a company without making relationships, not just in the office, but upstairs. I knew board members by name. I'd helped their departments during mergers, saved major clients during crises, and had been the go-to guy when things went sideways. So that night, I sent 3 emails. Not complaints. Just notes. One to the vice president of strategy, another to the CFO, and one to the chairman himself. I didn't ask for my job back. I simply laid out the facts: a veteran employee being replaced by an unqualified relative. Breach of internal policy. Unethical hiring. A potential PR disaster waiting to happen. I didn't expect immediate action. In big corporations, things move slow. But the next day, I got a call. It was the chairman. His voice was calm, but sharp. "David, I wasn't aware of what had transpired. Can you come in Monday morning for a conversation?" I arrived early, wearing the same blue suit I wore the day I received my 10-year award. The boardroom felt different without the weight of a job on my shoulders. I sat across from 6 board members, all of whom I had worked with in one capacity or another. The chairman led the discussion. "We've reviewed your email. What Daniel did violates several internal codes, including nepotism guidelines. We had no idea he was related to Jason." I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. "I didn't think you did. That's why I reached out. This isn't just about me, it's about the message this sends to the rest of the staff." The room fell quiet for a moment. Then the chairman spoke again. "David, if we were to offer you a role, senior strategy advisor, reporting directly to the board, would you accept?" I didn't answer right away. I looked around the room, thinking of all the years I'd spent building something that someone tried to erase in a matter of weeks. Finally, I nodded. "Only if I'm allowed to restructure leadership evaluation processes. This can't happen to anyone else." The chairman smiled. Done. Word traveled fast. Within 48 hours, Daniel was suspended pending investigation. Jason was escorted out of the building. The HR director who processed my termination resigned quietly. And I moved into a new office on the top floor, no longer part of the everyday grind, but part of the oversight that would make sure loyalty and merit never took a backseat to connections again. The transition into my new role wasn't without its challenges. Moving from day-to-day operations into a board-level advisory position felt like entering an entirely different world. Instead of solving client problems or managing teams, I was now evaluating leaders, overseeing policy, and restructuring the very framework of company ethics and performance. It was powerful and heavy. I wasn't just shaping policies now. I was shaping the future of the company. Daniel's suspension turned into a formal internal investigation. What surfaced in the following weeks was staggering. Jason, his nephew, wasn't just shadowing him, he had been approved as a contract consultant with a discrete monthly payment attached. No vetting, no HR paperwork, no compliance checks. Just Daniel's signature and a shady backdoor arrangement. That was enough to violate at least 4 company policies and trigger a compliance audit. But the real storm hit when emails between Daniel and an external recruitment agency were uncovered. He had been actively discussing plans to replace 3 other senior employees with his own contacts from a previous company, none of whom had gone through formal interviews. It wasn't just nepotism, it was a full-blown internal power grab. The board was furious. During an emergency session, the chairman looked around the table and said, "This is why oversight matters." One man nearly compromised the structure and integrity of an entire department. I sat quietly at the corner of the table, silently observing the chaos Daniel had left in his wake. It wasn't vindication I felt, it was validation. The kind that seeps into your bones when you realize you weren't paranoid or overly cautious. You were right. Daniel was terminated. Officially. No option to resign, no severance, no exit package. The board made sure the message was clear: leadership at this company was earned, not inherited. But even with him gone, the damage needed to be repaired. There was a quiet fear spreading through the office, people whispering in hallways, wondering if they'd be the next target, if favoritism would define their futures. The culture had been shaken, and restoring trust was now my responsibility. I spent weeks meeting with department heads, hosting open Q&A sessions, and introducing a new ethics reporting system that allowed anonymous concerns to be escalated directly to my office. Every face I saw, every voice I heard in those sessions, reminded me of what was at stake. These weren't just employees, they were the heart of the company. One conversation in particular stuck with me. Linda, a senior analyst who'd worked with me on numerous projects, approached after a session. "You know," she said, "I thought I was next. When they let you go, we all figured they were clearing house." I gave her a small smile. "They tried. But some things don't go quietly." She laughed softly, but her eyes were serious. "I'm glad you came back. It means something. To all of us." Those words anchored me. I realized this wasn't just about my career anymore. It was about legacy. For 18 years, I had been building something, a standard, a reputation, a culture of merit. And for a moment, someone tried to erase that. But now, I had a chance to make sure no one ever tried again. 6 months into my new role, I launched the Leadership Integrity Program, an initiative that redefined how managers were hired, evaluated, and promoted. It wasn't just performance metrics anymore. It was values, ethics, mentorship, and team feedback. Every leadership candidate now had to go through a 360-degree review process, and every final decision had to be reviewed by a new advisory panel, including me. Not everyone welcomed the change. Some long-timers, comfortable in their old ways, pushed back. They called it too corporate, too idealistic, or unnecessary bureaucracy. I didn't blame them. Change is always uncomfortable. But then I'd remind them of Daniel. Of Jason. Of how close we came to letting one man compromise everything we'd built. Eventually, even the skeptics came around. Especially when the first wave of promotions under the new system resulted in one of the most diverse, competent, and respected management teams the company had seen in years. And yet, despite all of this, the policy wins, the cultural victories, there was still one thing left to do. One conversation I hadn't had. One ghost I hadn't laid to rest. Daniel. After his termination, he disappeared from the industry for a while. Rumors said he tried to start a consultancy firm but couldn't get traction. Word spreads fast in corporate circles, especially when it involves ethics scandals. One afternoon, about a year later, I received an unexpected email. It was from him. "David. I doubt you'll want to hear from me. But I owe you this. What I did was wrong. I thought bringing Jason in would help him, help me, help everyone. I lost sight of what mattered. You didn't deserve what happened. You beat me, fair and square. And you made the company stronger. I hope you'll forgive me one day. Daniel." I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't reply. Some apologies don't need answers. But I didn't delete the email either. I archived it, as a reminder that integrity doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it just survives. Because in the end, that's what I had done. Survived. Outlasted a system that tried to erase me. And turned it into something better than it ever was before. The dust had settled, but the echoes of everything that had happened still lingered in quiet corners of the office, in the glances exchanged during meetings, and in the cautious optimism of people trying to move forward. With Daniel gone and Jason's consulting role officially annulled, a new chapter had begun, but the company needed more than a policy refresh. It needed healing. The Leadership Integrity Program had found traction, and the cultural climate had begun shifting. Employees who once kept their heads down were now stepping forward, offering ideas, challenging the status quo, and participating in company-wide strategy sessions. A sense of ownership had taken root. People weren't just doing their jobs, they were investing in the company's future again. That shift was powerful, and it began to spark innovations across departments. Sales reported its best quarter in 5 years. HR noted a dramatic drop in complaints and attrition. Our internal surveys showed an all-time high in employee trust and morale. But what struck me the most were the personal transformations. I saw young employees like Tara, who once doubted her place, grow into confident team leads. I watched seasoned veterans like Raj, who had nearly quit after Daniel's restructuring began, re-engage with renewed energy. I saw my own team blossom, no longer shackled by fear or favoritism. There were moments of tension, of course. Progress is rarely linear. Some departments struggled to adapt. A few middle managers still operated with remnants of the old mindset, playing politics, resisting accountability. But the new systems made it harder for such behavior to go unnoticed. And I ensured every concern, every red flag, was investigated thoroughly. We weren't just talking about values anymore. We were living them. One afternoon, while walking past the open concept workspace we had redesigned, I noticed something unusual. On a whiteboard, someone had scribbled, "You don't build a legacy by staying silent. DM." Those weren't my exact words, but they captured everything I had come to believe. It wasn't about revenge. It was never really about Daniel or Jason. It was about the principle. About standing firm when it would have been easier to walk away. And now, those ideas had quietly become part of the company's new DNA. Not long after, the board approached me with a proposal. They wanted to make the Leadership Integrity Program a core part of the company's branding, not just an internal tool, but a pillar of our identity. They asked me to lead a company-wide culture transformation initiative, one that would be rolled out across all offices, including international branches. I accepted, but with one condition: I wanted a team of cross-functional leaders from every level of the organization to co-develop the framework. No more top-down decrees. If we were going to build something sustainable, it had to be inclusive. The project, dubbed Pulse, launched within 3 months. It brought together engineers, designers, HR reps, marketing staff, and frontline managers, all working toward one goal: embedding integrity and merit into every fiber of the company. The process was messy, democratic, and sometimes chaotic, but it was honest. And for the first time in years, everyone felt seen. Meanwhile, word of what we were doing began to spread beyond our walls. Industry leaders started reaching out, asking for white papers, inviting me to speak at conferences, wanting to understand how a company once on the brink of internal decay had managed such a transformation. I wasn't comfortable in the spotlight, I never had been, but I realized this story wasn't mine alone anymore. It belonged to everyone who had stayed. Everyone who had believed. At one such conference, during a panel discussion, a moderator asked me a question that stopped me mid-thought. "If you could go back and stop Daniel from replacing you with his nephew, would you?" There was silence in the room. My fingers tightened around the microphone. "No," I said finally. "I wouldn't. Because sometimes the fire has to come before the rebuilding. If that hadn't happened, I might have stayed comfortable. The company might have stayed complacent. We wouldn't have grown the way we did. It was painful, yes. But it was necessary." There were nods across the stage. And for a moment, I felt the weight of the past 18 years, not as a burden, but as proof of what resilience can create. Back at the office, I returned to a new energy. The Pulse team had finalized our first set of company-wide principles, crafted collaboratively by more than 150 employees. They weren't just values painted on a wall, they were commitments tied to our hiring, our promotions, our daily decisions. And they were beautiful. One principle read: "We lead with integrity, not intention. We rise by merit, not name." It was subtle, but anyone who knew the story behind it would understand exactly what it meant. And just when I thought the chapter was closed, something unexpected happened. Jason reached out. Not through email. Not through LinkedIn. In person. He had returned to the city and requested a meeting. Against my better judgment, and perhaps out of a need for closure, I agreed. We met at a small cafe near the office. He looked older, more humbled. Not the brash, overconfident kid I remembered. I just wanted to say I was wrong, he said. I didn't understand what I walked into back then. I thought this was just a ladder I could climb because someone held it for me. I didn't realize how many people I stepped on along the way. I listened. Quietly. I've been working. Studying. Trying to earn what I once thought I deserved by default. That struck a chord. I'm not here to ask for anything, he added. Just, thank you. For doing what was right. Even if it hurt. He left after that. And I sat there, watching the rain paint streaks on the window, thinking about the strange, poetic symmetry of it all. The man who had once replaced me with his nephew had now become a footnote in a story where merit finally triumphed. Time has a way of reshaping even the sharpest memories, smoothing the edges, dulling the pain, and bringing clarity to what once felt like chaos. Looking back now, I don't carry resentment, only perspective. The betrayal, the humiliation, and the long nights spent wondering where I went wrong, all of it now feels like necessary friction in a larger arc of transformation. What happened to me wasn't fair. But it was also not final. Because I chose not to let it be. That, I've come to learn, is the real power, choosing how we respond when control is taken from us. I could have walked away quietly, bitterly, and left the place to rot under bad leadership. But I stayed. Not for revenge, not for pride, but because there were people who still believed. And that belief deserved protection. The company I once feared would collapse under nepotism is now thriving under transparency. The systems we built weren't perfect, but they were honest. And from that honesty came progress. Real, sustainable progress. People are promoted based on results, not relationships. Decisions are made collaboratively, not politically. And every time someone new joins the team, they're told not just what we do, but why we do it differently. As for me, I no longer define my worth by titles or corner offices. I define it by impact, by knowing I helped reshape a broken system into something others could believe in again. Daniel? I haven't heard from him since the board's decision. And I don't need to. His chapter ended the moment integrity returned. Jason's unexpected apology didn't erase the past, but it offered a strange kind of closure. Maybe he'll do better with his second chance. Maybe not. That's no longer my story to write. But this one? The story of how a name on a termination list became the catalyst for cultural rebirth? That's one I'll never stop telling.